Gather around. We have a good amount to talk about before we get into some analysis. I think the analysis is going to be based around what I'll mention halfway through the video, so stick around. Well, INOUE definitely made this weekend far more interesting as expected, but he made it interesting in some unexpected ways. He got dropped once again in the exact same way, in almost the exact same situation, almost. Now, get down in the comments. Tell me your thoughts about everything involved in this fight. Anything about it. Now, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's talk about this before we drop the analysis. So, for one, since the start of this channel, when I started covering boxing and breaking down everything, it has been known. I've made it clear that INOUE is my favorite boxer by a pretty wide margin. However, I make it a point to say that the people you should criticize the most are the ones that you care about the most, the ones that you like the most, because criticism does not equal hate. In fact, it's actually the opposite. Criticism is an ask from one person to another to make themselves better. Now, as much as I've glazed INOUE at times, and not to the same degree, but to a pretty notable degree, I've also had a fair amount of criticism of him. The primary criticism being defensive responsibility. Now, when you criticize a boxer, this is certainly true for anybody. Like if you criticize a musician, if you criticize a football player, but boxing specifically, if you criticize a boxer, it must be because you're a hater or for so many other reasons other than you just want to see them improve. Boxing fans are extremely sensitive. There you go. Since I know so much about INOUE, especially in the most recent years of his career, I know that he kind of has two modes that he gets into. There's the mode when he doesn't really have respect for his opponent. He's really relaxed and loose. His arms are down. He's happy-go-lucky. He's jumping in and out, throwing big shots, winking big punches. He doesn't have any guard. And I've seen an increase in that psychological state, that approach, it's over the recent years, especially at 122. And I noted that when he fought Tapales, and I've noted this some other times in the past, the Neri fight, for example, the other half of INOUE's personality is the opposite. In the ring, when he's very serious, very focused, usually with a high guard or a shell, his feet are more planted and he's only moving when he has to. He's not jumping around throwing big shots. It's mostly straight tight punches and he's timing stuff. He's setting up his jab. He's just looking for counters, adapting. He's patient. Completely two opposites. But this fight is a perfect example of that bipolarism to a degree. Now in this fight, you see that it's displayed because in rounds 1 and rounds 2, he has no respect for his opponent, and eventually that lack of respect gets him in trouble, just like how it did with Neri. Now, it's always a surprise when a world-class fighter gets dropped. Well, it's always a surprise when like one of the best fighters in the world, not just a world-class fighter, but he who runs at the top of his class, gets dropped. But that doesn't necessarily mean just because it's a surprise that it wasn't on the list of expectations. Tim Bradley kept making a point of that, but this is something that I've not particularly the left hook exactly, although he does have a history of getting caught with left hook, like in the Nonito Donaire fight, but just him being irresponsible, entering into range and leaving range. In fact, in the analysis, I'll probably talk about the switch that he has from loose and not responsible to tight and more responsible. So that's what I was talking about. Turn on the notification bell because that's probably going to be the focus of the analysis. I say it's kind of a psychological thing because sometimes you can tell he feels like it's too easy. He's kind of like taunting and doing all other kinds of stuff. He wasn't really taunting in this fight, but in some of his other fights, he'll be doing so much other stuff, playing around. But reflexes, he has great reflexes, obviously, but reflexes do not beat timing, because timing is the act of perfectly catching someone when they're not prepared. So it doesn't matter how good your reflexes are, if you run face first into a punch like he did, you're in trouble. Now, one thing he's consistently proving, which is, you don't want to consistently prove this, but is that his recovery is tremendous. He has great recovery both mentally and physically. But again, that's not something you generally want to prove unless you have to. And that's the entire point. He didn't have to prove it. He brought that to himself unnecessarily, took unnecessary risk, was irresponsible in unnecessary ways, and paid a necessary price. Now, one other thing, just before we end off, about how he finished the fight, and shout out to Cardenas was a dog. There was times where, this isn't the one other thing, this is like the one other thing. Cardenas was a dog in there. He was dangerous at all times. And it was a little bit of early stoppage, but INOUE was going to get him out of there. There's only 2 fighters that are that good at finishing, Crawford and INOUE. But still, it was kind of early stoppage. But those body shots, Cardenas was tough in there, and he was dangerous at all times. He was swinging that big left hook and sometimes the right hook. So shout out to him for going out there and doing what he did. Because we always focus on the star, that we have to also give credit to the person who helps make the star. INOUE, this is the other thing. He doesn't have that monstrous power anymore. Now, there's a caveat. He kind of has the Pacquiao power at 147, in the sense that he's at bigger weight classes where he's not putting people out cold as much anymore, if at all, but he's dropping them, stopping them, and he's breaking them down. So you're not gonna see too many like just all of a sudden they sleep in the 3rd round. You're probably not gonna see too much of that. You'll see them get rocked, you'll see them back up, you'll see them get dropped, and you'll see them get broken down, but you won't see them just get sent to the shadow realm that much anymore. But I think because of that, his skill is going to be pushed to the surface more. He's going to get forced to rely more on his timing, forced to rely more on manifesting creative combinations, which that was one of the things I criticized about the Bipolarism fight. And he started bringing out some of the combinations and working the body in this fight. I was like, why is he not working the body in those first few rounds? And he's going to be forced to rely more on setting traps and counter punching instead of just winging big shots and jumping around. And I think that's a positive thing. And I think he needs to fight more like how he fought against Maloney, for example, which is one of his cleaner performances, or Fulton, for example, which is another clean and probably my favorite performance of his. And if he does that, we can see the monster potentially become undisputed at 126. But if not, then he's in danger. For a final note, no one is infallible, no one is unbeatable, no one is perfect. There are some fighters that are damn good, and some fighters that are monsters, some fighters that are both. Now, that should be admired, but it should not be worshipped. Boxing is a dangerous game, and almost no one can play with it for that long. Like, some people can play boxing. INOUE plays boxing sometimes. Roy Jones can play boxing. Ali, like, it's rare. But almost no one can play with it for that long before they run into someone that reminds them that this is a fight. Now, INOUE did a great job of getting more discipline and pulling out of the way of the left hook and keeping that right glove up and trying to bait out the left hook to counter it and stuff like that. And that helped him finish the fight. But he got caught with a good one tonight. So that's all. I'm out. He saved the weekend.